argument to lose weight is an individual ought to lose weight because overweight and obesity are a burden to others. Obese people should bear the consequences of their weight themselves instead of burdening the rest of society. Burdens can be concrete. Sitting next to an obese person in a not too generous airplane seat, well, maybe we should make that a train seat, is unpleasant. The burden can also be more indirect, such as the costs of healthcare, the cost of absence from work, burdening colleagues and employers, or the increase in cost of transport tickets. Do anorectic persons pay less as they weigh less, or can they share a seat? According to this argument, the average and the thin should not have to pay. It builds on the idea that the obesity pandemic has dramatic consequences, threatens the social fabric of societies, undermines solidarity, and that healthcare will become unaffordable. I interpret the argument here as a fairness argument and not as it is also used as a paternalistic argument to motivate people through financial incentives. Now, who should pay? Society for being obesogenic or the obese for being obese? It's a very complicated argument. First again, the question of responsibility. Is it fair that people pay for the risks of mountaineering or skiing by taking out special insurance? Is being obese comparable to such well-defined, limited and voluntary chosen activities? I do not think so, for being obese is a resultant of many factors. One may let it happen to a certain extent, but it is not a purposely chosen goal, except for a specific role in a movie, like Renee Zellweger to play Bridget Jones. People hardly ever set out to become obese. And practically, it may be very difficult to distinguish between more or less consciously chosen lifestyle. A second question is it fair to single out the obese? People who overindulge in physical activities may get hurt. Runners run risks. Climbers can fall. People who produce an excess of adrenaline giving a lecture for an unknown London audience suffer terrible stress. And workaholics and hypochondriacs do not come cheap either. Should happily married people who are healthier than single persons pay less? Should we distinguish all these incommensurable risks, attach a monetary value to them and translate that into a personalized bill? The intrusion of privacy. This is an unexpected visit from the food police. Any queen of pudding, sticky toffee pudding, knickerbockers, glory around. Necessary for such bookkeeping, the administrative burden, the actuarial gymnastics, and the invitations to watchers of weight to spy on others might lead to a Solution society I, for one, would not like to live in. One may not think highly of some lifestyles, but still cherish the freedom of fellow citizens being allowed to pursue the lifestyle. I personally find a hot dog eating contest rather distasteful, and that is a euphemism. For those interested in dystopic descriptions, I recommend the modern version of Erewhon, a novel called Corpus Delicti, describing a society in which doing something unhealthy is a serious crime. Disease as a punishment is an idea I hoped we had abandoned. Thirdly, the argument seems to imply that if you pay for your unhealthy lifestyles, society has no further right to interfere. By paying your modern version of an indulgence, you are free to do as you wish. However, paying cannot dissolve you from your moral duty to take care of your health, nor does it diminish the duty of society to make itself less obesogenic. If the taxes or fines or other financial measures are not based on fairness but as an incentive, this argument does of course not hold. The fairness argument is more and more brought forward to exclude obese people from certain medical treatments. If a treatment is futile for someone obese, that makes sense. But sometimes the reasons not to treat are moral judgment in medical disguise, and actually state that the obese do not deserve treatment. Of course, in some professions, one has to have a certain fitness. Can this policeman catch a crook who is in better shape? But this is a specific duty in case of a specific job. some argue that healthcare professionals should always demonstrate a healthy lifestyle to set an example. How far can that argument be stretched? I'm not altogether certain that ethicists should always live an ethical lifestyle, whatever that may be. So hopefully they are clever enough to come up with arguments to defend that whatever lifestyle they have is ethically respectable. I think the pay your way argument will certainly play a strong role in the continuing debate. Obesity is not only about national fairness, but also about global justice. Global disparities between hunger and overeating are pressing and cruel. During my talk, although I'm going a bit too fast, 800 people will die from starvation, a horrifying thought. How to make sure that everyone has access to enough and to healthy food is one of the most important themes of international politics, as for example, the European Group on Ethics has stressed in its report. It is our general lifestyle that needs moral scrutiny, not only obesity. In the Netherlands, we throw away so much food that apparently that is more expensive than the annual costs of obesity. Can we, for example, afford to continue to eat meat? What is required of us in terms of health, sustainability and solidarity, nationally and globally? You could criticize me for being too optimistic. People will not change voluntarily. Nudges are not enough. You could criticize me for being too forgiving, for not punishing them for what they brought upon themselves. For too romantic, for having this weak spot for fallibility, frailty, and even frivolity. And of course for queen of pudding, sticky toffee pudding, and knickerbocker's glory. For being too aloof, for not appreciating many are looking out for help rather than respect. Or for too fatalistic when it comes to conquering death and disease. Or even criticize me for being a lousy ethicist, for condoning gluttony, lust, sloth, and sloppiness. So be it. If you insist on telling me, I warn you that too much criticism can seriously endanger my health. And that I have sometimes exaggerated for the sake of looking at the other side of the coin. We are no saints, and that makes life more difficult as well as more interesting. It takes strength to acknowledge one's weaknesses. And I certainly hope we don't need the Salusian approach to solve the big public health problems